Now we'd like to invite Dilek Bil, one of SustainFinance's senior advisors, who will be moderating our third panel, From Waste to Wealth, Closing the Loop in the Circular Economy.
And the panelists are Burcu Türkeş, Tekfen Agricultural Industry Group,
Deniz Daştan, Turkish Airlines,
and Özlem Ünlüer, Beko.
As you can see, there's a little positive discrimination here. Welcome, everyone, to our afternoon session of Climate Investment Summit. It's a critical gathering to address one of the most pressing challenges of our times, climate change. Today, surrounded by the urgency of our global climate crisis, we come together with a shared commitment to fostering innovation, driving investment, and catalyzing transformative change. Our panel, titled From Waste to Wealth, Closing the Loop in the Circular Economy, serves as a beacon of hope and opportunity in our collective journey towards sustainability. At its core, the circular economy represents a paradigm shift to the linear economy, which is the take, make, and dispose model. And this embraces the resource efficiency, waste reduction, and regeneration. My panelists are all very experts on their subjects, and throughout our dialogue today, we will share insights, innovations, and best practices. I will not introduce my panelists again. They were introduced. I will turn to agri-food industry and start with Burcu to emphasize on a few points. The global food and agricultural system, as we all know, is a marvel of human achievement. It feeds 7.9 billion people, employs 40% of the world's population, and generates 1/3 of global GDP. An overall economic contribution of the food and agricultural industry is huge, but its benefits are uneven. 65% of working adults who live in poverty make their living through agriculture. At the same time, agriculture has a huge burden on the environment, creating more than 1/4 of all greenhouse gas emissions and acting as the biggest contributor to deforestation and loss of biodiversity. Last but not least, agriculture is responsible for about 24% of global emissions and are likely to grow by 15 to 20% by 2050. So after putting all these facts down, now I turn to Burcu. Burcu, how do you envision leveraging circular economy principles to transform global agricultural systems into more sustainable, resource-efficient, and regenerative systems? And furthermore, what specific strategies or initiatives do you propose for integrating circular economy principles across the agricultural value chain? Floor is yours.
Floor is mine. Well, I'll take the Fifth Amendment after this introduction, I think. Good afternoon, all. Thank you, Kübra, the CFA Society, as well as SustainFinance for organizing this panel. We had wonderful, insightful sessions in the morning, so a nice segue to our closeout panel before lunch. Right now, we're going to keep it as energized and as short and sweet as possible because after lunch sessions are always a challenge.
Exactly.
As you see, Dilek, I'm trying to fill up time, so I don't have to answer the hard questions. Well, anyhow, this is a question that we always get. Being in the agro industry, basically, while agro-industry itself has many players, all the way to raw materials, to the value chain, so all the impacts that you can envision are caused by the multi-stakes of players. So the question we always get is, are you the villain or are you the savior? Are you the hero or are you the polluter? The easy answer is both, as you have very kindly laid out with hard figures. Circularity, like in anything else, I'll step back. I think there are two overarching themes that we have heard throughout this morning's session, especially Shiba, Andreas, our society partners. They were talking about changing business models. I think the question is not about what and when or who, it's about how fast. So it's here, it's not going to go anywhere. I think one of the your teams is, if not now, when? If not us, who? It's us, basically. So the biggest challenge when it comes to circular economy is actually to be able to circulate. We keep on talking about circular economy, but we don't actually get a lot of legway to be able to circulate. And it's related to three, in our experience, in the agro industry, it's related to three key pillars. First of all, it's about your inventory. Before we go back to the concept of waste, I'd like to give those three levers. I'll come back to that in the second round. So a meaningful and really reusable inventory, what it means for the agro industry partners obviously differs depending on where you land on your value chain. And again, Shiva talked about trust. To me, there is a new currency emerging in this new era with the business models. It's the trust and the value. So basically, trust comes from the value you generate, not only for your company, but for all the stakeholders that are active players. That means all the stakeholders that get impacted and that impacts the entire value chain. And value has to be measured, and it comes from the impact itself. So going back to the second pillar, I think to make anything circular is an enabling regulatory framework, which is key. We heard about that a lot. It's not just the policy, it's not just compliance tick boxes, but it's mostly about the ecosystem that's going to support you. Not just one final policy, but it has to be taking into account all the externalities and all the intersection points that happens in your value chain. And last but not the least, and I'm going to keep it to the next round basically, because that's where rubber meets the road, so I'll stop here if you like, Dilek, and I'll let my esteemed panelists take
Okay.
theirs.
Thank you, Burcu. Very clearly understood. Well underlined. Thank you. But we haven't decided if you're the villain or the hero. We'll wait for the second round.
Both.
Okay. Okay, now I'll go to Özlem. Before asking the question, I would like to make the statement that Beko and Arçelik, and why don't you explain us what happened recently, because it's a really shifting all our paradigms. And
exactly. Thank
please
you.
go ahead.
I was going to start by saying that before, at the beginning of April, we have announced a major joint venture, our joint venture with Whirlpool Corporation in terms of acquiring Whirlpool EMEA operations. And we now call these operations as Beko Europe. That marks a very important journey in our globalization history, because we were before that a very global company, but as of now, we're a global company that consists of more than 50,000 employees, and as part of our globalization journey, the name Arçelik, it being a very Turkish name, didn't resonate with the overall strategy, so we said, why not call it Beko, because Beko was already our global brand. So that's just a global rebranding. Arçelik AŞ, the company, it's still there. It's still the mother company, but overall, as a corporate branding, we now call the company Beko, for the obvious reason that we want it to be as short and sweet as possible, so that was the reason.
But it's a great accomplishment, so we congratulate all of you. And now that your sustainability efforts vary from country to country across the globe, so how do you face the challenges of reconciling global standardization with regional adaptation in strategic approach?
To be very honest, we're not facing it. It's very hard to be faced, actually. We're trying to adapt to it and to be proactive about it. One example that I can give is like we have science-based targets and we have a net zero strategy aligned with the SBTI. And we're saying that as the home appliance industry, our major impact is coming from the use of home appliances. You know, of course, in countries like the northern countries where there's a grid electrification, there's no issue. But when you talk about countries like developing economies and all the countries that we're selling our appliances to, the more we make those appliances more efficient, the more we create an impact because, you know, overall, 30% of the GHG emissions coming from our homes, they're based on these home appliances that we're using, so we do have an impact. So we're saying that voluntarily, we will be producing more energy efficient appliances, despite the fact that there might be a cost up on that appliance, and despite the fact that in most of the countries, there isn't even a regulation that's regulating the market in terms of making an appliance energy efficient. So, you know, let's say in Bangladesh, you can dump all your cheapest stuff on the market and no one is going to care because there is no regulation. And when it comes to that, we're saying that even in Bangladesh, we're going to be producing more efficient appliances. So what that means is a huge risk in terms of financial consequences because we might not be able to reflect the cost upon the price to the consumer. So we might lose market share because other players are not going to do the same as we're doing. So those risks, by the way, we also report in our CDP reports in terms of the risk quantification as well. So that's just one way of looking at it. That's like in the EU, there's a very heavily regulated market, and in other countries, in the developing economies, it's not that much regulated. So what we're doing is we're trying to also change the markets in which we're operating. Like in South Africa, when we went there, you know, there was no energy efficiency label on the market. What we did was, okay, we invested in R&D, we produced more efficient appliances, and at the same time, we lobbied with the government that they should incentivize and they should introduce energy efficiency labels on the market. So in that market, we were successful. So that's our strategy. We're trying to change the market with us as well. So that's just, I mean, that's not an example of circularity, but the same also goes for circularity. Like, for instance, in Turkey, we have 2 WEEE recycling facilities, meaning waste electronic component recycling facilities. We built these facilities proactively to be to be ahead of the regulations, you know, sometimes we're not even break even with that operations due to the logistic costs. But we keep on doing it despite these because to our strategic consumers, customers like the B2B customers, it shows that we are the only manufacturer in the EU having their WEEE recycling facilities. So this is something when you think about it in terms of the commitment. So those would be my examples.
There's a cost of being a leader in the
exactly.
markets. So you're also facing that. And also the product life extension management and product end of life management are doing, you're handling it very correctly as far as I observe.
But you know, Burcu was mentioning about lack of regulation, right? That lack of regulation coupled with the lack of incentives, I think that's what's pushing us corporate companies to the point of not being able to do sometimes the very right thing, I guess. Because, you know, in the end, we're all trying to be corporate companies, so it's not for charity, so we need to balance that. And that balance, without these regulations and the incentives, it's pushing us very hard, I think.
Of course, it's always not correctly understood because your company is a profit-making establishment, so it has to continue on that path. But there's also investments that needs to be done to be on the able to handle the sustainability parameters correctly. So it's just a short, medium, and long-term investment strategies that has to be looked into carefully, and it has to start from the top. And your top is very much committed to that.
Oh, very much.
To the. Now I'll go back to Deniz. Of course, aviation industry is not a very clean industry either. But being aware of the difficulties, aviation industry has a difficult but imperative role in meeting sustainability goals. And Turkish Airlines is handling that very well. Many companies across the industry and the value chain players have set goals to be completed over the long term, but there are actions to take today to move closer to the accomplishment of these objectives. To get started, companies should understand which actions to prioritize for the greatest impact and for a cost-optimal path to net zero. Dear Deniz, can you share with us how Turkish Airlines coping with the issue and what are the sustainability initiatives being applied?
Thank you, dear distinguished guests. Good afternoon to you all. After an enjoyable lunch, we are all together again. Before I respond to your question, Dilek Hanım, I would like to thank SustainFinance, CFA Istanbul, and also Garanti BBVA for their kind invitation and hosting this fruitful meeting. Actually, when we come back to our topic, circular economy, the concept of circular economy is basic yet powerful issue, and it aims to keep material, products, and resources in use for as long as possible and get maximum value from them, and then recovering and regenerating products and services at the end of each of service life. And this shift requires a fundamental rethinking of our traditional business concept, supply chain, and also consumption routine. As an airline company, we recognize the role and responsibility for this transition from reducing single-use plastic to implementing innovative waste management solutions. And as Turkish Airlines, we are working actively to reduce our negative impacts to the environment. And for this transition, it is important for the companies to put this issue on their agenda at high level. And with this regard, we have actually a high-level sustainability committee in our company. And it is chaired by our CEO, and our chief officer also are members of this committee. And the committee meets at least 4 times in a year. And the committee carries out its activity, determine, review, and continuously improve Turkish Airlines sustainability management strategy, policy, short, medium, long-term targets, and to decide on improvement project that will increase Turkish Airlines sustainability performance. And besides this high-level sustainability committee, we also established 4 different subcommittees, taking into account our most material issues. One of them is Sustainable Products Subcommittee. And the committee works to investigate sustainable products to replace with on our flights. And also our office activities. And relevant department managers are members of this committee, and it aims to reduce usage of plastic on our flights and also increase our sustainable product, which we serve to our passengers. And adapting circular economy, we actually proceed waste prevention, minimization, proper disposal, and reuse strategy throughout our operations. And we serve many sustainable products and services to our passengers, our journey. And before the flight, our mobile boarding pass allows to our passengers to make paperless check-in. And since 2018, we have been serving biodegradable package for our headphone, also our blanks. And addition our biodegradable packaging, we also try to reduce plastic on our flights. For example, we serve travel and toy set without any plastic, and we could prevent millions of plastic in this way, actually. And also, we try to replace our single-use plastic with the alternatives. Instead of plastic toys, we serve wooden toys, which are produced for Stewart Council certified forest product to our child passengers with plain natural concept. And our blanks also have Ecotech certification and also are produced using without any chemicals. And our intercontinental business class passengers enjoy their slippers and shoe bags crafted 100% be sustainable yarns and recycled cotton and also polyester. And we also used 100% recycled paper on our flights. I can give our safety card as an example for this implementation. And we also use reusable service equipment to our passengers on our flights, such as porcelain, melamine, glass, and also metalware. And in 2023, we realized an upcycling project. We call it Upcycling for the Future. It inspires both sector and also in the world in line with principles of the circular economy. And we designed and we produced shoes, boats for the children from our cabin crew accessories, which have reached their service life. And on top of that, the most value of this project has been helping to meet children's needs, actually. And also our project received bronze awards from Steve Awards Communication or Public Relation Campaign in the category of corporate responsibility. Lastly, I would like to mention about importance of sustainability communication. We actually recognize importance of sustainability communication in conveying our implementation to our passengers. Not only passengers, actually all stakeholders. And we have introduced our new motto, new brand, Tomorrow on Board, in line with our sustainability strategy. And we aim to develop a holistic communication approach for our sustainability efforts. And lastly, I would like to say the external launch of this motto will be held in 5th of June, Environment Day, at Istanbul Airport. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a big world, but as far as I understand, Turkish Airlines has really integrated the business strategy with the sustainability strategy very well and embedded into the governance, and therefore you're able to carry it to the consumer side, inside the company, and also the communications. Very well done. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I start with the negative. I first said you have a lot of harm in the aviation
Another tough
industry
question
too.
is coming
Then-
up. I know. All right, sure.
Okay.
We're ready.
Now let's go into the agribusiness, the agricultural value chain and agribusiness. Policymakers, financial institutions, other stakeholders, they have to work all together.
Correct.
But adaptation is difficult. You can tell us at a broader scale, whereby ensuring the both economical viability and environmental resilience for farmers, and how can we change the mind shift in the farmers, because they're the big stakeholders. Their high contribution to the agribusiness is incredible. So, floor is yours.
Easier said than done. I just realized I haven't provided any detailed information about the group and the company, but anyone who is interested in all those impacts, positive, negative alike, they're in our reports. You can check our website. It's in the numbers. The beauty resides with the numbers. So thank you so much. It's very inspirational. I think, as Özlem said, doing the right thing more so than ticking the compliance box, first of all. And the regulatory landscape. I hope you will remember the 3 pillars for making circularity operational, not just for agriculture, but for any industry. If anyone remembers the first 2, please howl, and there'll be a big grand prize, because I'm now going to talk about the pillar number 3, which is very difficult to enable.
It's inventory and enabling easy environment.
enabling the regulator. You're done. Aylin Recep, my partners on crime, our head of strategy, investor relations, as well as my chief technology officer is in the room. You talk about how important it is to make sure that sustainability is ingrained in all business functions, otherwise it dies. So when it comes to the ecosystem, the third one is actually a concerted effort throughout the entire value chain partners. Both Dilek and I are wearing these colorful badges. We haven't done any references to sustainable development goals yet, but SDG 17 says partnerships for goals to make anything a reality. We have all the key players taking their turns, and not forgetting about when it comes to circularity or food waste, what we do today is a sustainable food system. So remember, we're going through the most challenging dilemmas of our century. Feeding the world on one side, you have given the hard numbers, facts, and actually fighting the adverse effects on the climate change. It's here, it's real. It's not gonna go anywhere, it's a must, but what we have missed, I think on purpose in today's sessions, because the agenda is so masterfully laid out. Kudos to SustainFinance and CFA Society that now we're making that missing link. It's not just about carbon. It's about the soil, it's about the water, it's about the scarce resources. And guess what? As much as the beauty is in the eye of the beholder, value resides with the user. So we are a fertilizer producer. The picture gets even uglier. We are one of the villain industries, so to speak, according to the European Green Deal. Mm-hmm. But keep in mind, I think it was Andreas, I don't know if he has disappeared, but he talked a lot about the negative connotation that we use when it comes to risks. It's important to identify the risks, because risks tells us where the value gets destroyed. If we take position on time, find where that value gets destroyed in manufacturing, in production, or in use, then we can find a way to turn them into opportunities. This is for private companies. Concerted effort, going back to partnership for goals, the governments, incentives that we so miserably lack. But it doesn't only reside on the shoulder of the governments. We as the private companies, as the NGOs, we have a part. We have to do it all together. And honestly, I think we're all the market leaders. There's a reason why we all sat here on the stage. It comes with a lot of responsibility. And where the rubber gets actually a little bit bendy is at the farm. I wish I could say what happens at the farm stays at the farm. Unfortunately, it doesn't. If you do not doing it the right way on the farm, it gets into the soil, it gets into the air, and it gets into the water. That means crop protection as well as crop nutrition. So I do play a very positive part when it comes to touching the farmers, building resilient communities. We have a farmers academy that goes all around the world. You know what we do? We tell them how to use the fertilizers or the input more efficiently. Because the farmer in Turkey right now, they wouldn't care about the carbon credits that they get on the farm. Let's be honest, all they care about is how much efficiency they can get from a single acre of land. And they have all the right to do so.
Of course, the economical return is the most important for the farmers.
Obviously, so it's up to us to find creative business models to create that value. First of all, to prevent that value destruction on the farm. If they don't use the right product on the right time, at the right place, or in the right amount, that's obvious, it's wasted, just like in circularity. So we have to make sure we build that capability on the farm as a lead company in Turkey. That's our sole aim and responsibility, and we take a lot of pride in doing so. That could be the only thing that I can say. But at the same time, we have to make sure we all get together. Private companies, the governments, lobbying on its own is not enough. We have to help the governments to come up with practical solutions because we know how.
Exactly. Being on both sides is important, but you also take place in NGOs and in international arena.
Correct.
Especially, right?
Correct.
And you have done some changes on that field too. Maybe you can share some of your experiences there too.
I think it's mostly the International Fertilizer Organization as well as WBCSD Turkey, Sustainable Agriculture Farming Practices working groups, as well as a PG working group, as we call it. It's one of our, in Turkey, it's still considered as a waste, which the rest of the world actually accepts as a very useful and a very valuable raw material to other industries. So I do wear I'm the vice chairman, proudly saying this, not to brag, as I'm the only woman now sitting on the sustainability committee of the entire fertilizers producers associations. Those are big names, giant companies. I mean, Toros is a peanut when you compare us to the rest of the world. But what we have done is we have identified 3 key areas where sustainability really happens. Obviously, when producing fertilizers, you deal with nasty chemicals. So we said, obviously, we're going to continue producing mineral fertilizers. As we said, we don't use chemical fertilizers anymore. Keep that in mind. Communication matters, you're right. It's not greenwashing, though. It's scientifically proven. It's mineral because there are a lot of useful minerals on it. It's not the fertilizer that makes it hard. It's the use of it or the excessive amounts that, unfortunately, the farmer applies in the farm. Without fertilizers, sustainable agriculture is impossible. The second one is actually using digital and using data-driven systems and methodologies to be able to transform the business model, giving farmer back that insight to decide right on the farm, real time, how he's going to implement all the inputs so as to get to the output he is looking for. So I think the transformation, yes, to decarbonization, which is scope 1 and 2, but mostly scope 3 emissions. That is the biggest pain for all of us in all sectors, but in our sectors mostly. And the third one is capacity building on the farm. There are farmers' academies being built and Sustainable Fertilizer and Nutrition Academy that I am one of the board mothers of, that we are now bringing to Turkey with our partners. Hopefully we'll be opening to the dealers as well as the farmers and to the government institutions who takes a key part to play in this arena. It's just to name a few.
It will make a difference.
I hope so.
Özlem, I'll go back to you again. And when you were talking about the change in the company, and how do you believe these strategies in sustainability part will be perceived by the investors? Now you have more responsibilities towards the investors, and particularly in terms of their impact and the company's financial performance.
Yeah, that's a very valid question, by the way, and that's something that we all need as corporates as well. You know, when I started in the sustainability area just 5 years ago, we didn't really get much question from investors about what we were doing or how we were reacting. I mean, in all the investor calls, there was nothing about sustainability or even no question coming to us. Just in the last 2 years, I would say, there's such a huge exponential growth about how we are managing the things that we are managing. You know, there's something very specific to our sector, which is like conflict minerals. It's like, you know, in terms of child and slavery in Congo, in terms of containing those, taking those precious materials. We even received questions from investors on how we're managing our conflict minerals, you know, and I was like, wow, 3 years ago, no one cared about these issues. So this shows the fact that financial institutions, financing sector also has responsibility and commitment and regulation in their part to invest in companies that are greener compared to others, right? Or even socially just compared to others. So what I would say is when we issued a green bond in the international markets back in 2021, we anticipated like a 350 million euro bond. We were like hoping, we hope that investors would be willing to really invest in it, and the demand in return was 1.6 billion euros, which in turn enabled us to act on the interest, and we decrease the interest rate. So basically, the finance people in the company saw for the first time that whatever they invested in sustainability is now paying back because, you know, the interest rate was lowered. So basically, we did save a lot of money on that. So what it showed is because the investors, I mean, I was part of the Investor Day explaining the strategy of the company, and I did receive a lot of questions about our sustainability strategy. And I believe because it was a green bond and because they believed in our strategy, they invested in these. But I would say that what I see as a conflict in terms of financing people is that because they also have these KPIs to really come up with corporate players to create sustainability-linked loans, sustainability bonds, whatever you name it, they're like, oh, let's do this. And even if you don't make the KPIs, we're not going to reduce your interest rate. And we are like, no, that's just greenwashing, right? You cannot do greenwashing, and I see a lot of financing institutions sometimes being prone to greenwashing as well because they want to keep their KPIs on track. And I believe that this is a very important issue, and the more the market is being regulated, I've seen the figures going down. You know, the green bond issues market, the figures are going down. There's a reason to it. It's not because it's not more, it doesn't make sense in terms of money. It's because right now it's even harder to conduct a sustainability-linked loan or a sustainability bond. The criteria are harsher. So that's why I believe to do the right thing and also get demand from the investors is very important. But the more companies can access cheaper financing, the more they can do better solutions and the more they can cooperate. So I believe whatever is being demanded from the investor side and the financing institution side, it's very important to keep companies like us on track, I believe.
Exactly. I'm sitting on the board of IDEM Renewable Energy, and we listened to the investor relations this morning, and it's very difficult. I also lead the sustainability committee, so it's just very difficult to really satisfy the investors nowadays because it's not like before.
Exactly.
Okay, now I would like to turn back to Deniz, and the industry has committed to achieving net zero flying by 2050. So its path to reaching that goal is quite complex. The industry has aligned on most of the important actions to decarbonize, like fleet renewals, disruptive technologies, operational efficiency, sustainable aviation fuel usage, carbon offsetting, which I have listened to from a great CEO who is a great follower of sustainability. Turkish Airlines also following so many of these steps and making efforts on that range. You can maybe tell us how you see the future in aviation industry in terms of climate change, and what steps are you planning to take, or you have taken in the past?
Absolutely, it is a very hot topic currently, climate change in aviation sector. And when we talk about sustainable perspective in the aviation industry, that means reimagining to everything. From fuel efficiency to carbon emissions. And according to two major international civil aviation organizations, ICAO and also IATA, have set targets to reduce negative impacts of aviation sector. And the aviation industry, as you state in your speech, demonstrates its determination on combating climate change with net zero emission target by 2050, announced by IATA and also ICAO. And the industry achievement of net zero emission by 2050 depends on effective climate policy through combination sustainable aviation fuels and hydrogen use, and also operational improvement projects and carbon offsetting, carbon capturing, and new generation aircraft. And all these implementations are considered important to achieve climate goals in line with 1.5 degrees goal of Paris Agreement. And in line with the sector target, as Turkish Airlines, we announced our long-term emission reduction target. We aim to be carbon neutral, not net zero, carbon neutral airline by 2050. And we determined 4 different subcomponents to achieve this target. And one of them, reducing carbon emissions by between 15 and 25% with new generation aircraft. We will include our fleet. And we plan to expand our current SAF usage. And we actually offset our emission, various offset projects in the world. And we actually increase our fuel efficiency performance by 5% until 2033. And lastly, we obtain minimum 5% energy, our building energy needs from renewable energy. And we are investigating in cutting new technology from next generation aircraft to sustainable aviation fuel because we know the aviation future, flight future actually depends on it. So last year as Turkish Airlines, we also announced our 10 years strategy, and the sustainability is at the center of that. So we are shaping our investments in line with this valuable strategy. And furthermore, we plan to add new generation aircraft to our fleet until 2033. And at least 95% of our aircraft will be new generation aircraft. And also we are focusing on the operational improvement project thanks to our comprehensive fuel efficiency policy. We implement many fuel efficiency projects. In this way, we can reduce our fuel consumption and also carbon emissions. And the ground side, we also implement fuel efficiency project. We actually plan to build solar energy for our building needs. And we are doing feasibility studies, and we will complete very soon, and we will start build renewable energy solar panels for our building consumptions. And also the most important thing to achieve aviation sector long-term emission reduction target is SAF usage. Currently we use SAF actually. Since 2022, we regularly use SAF in our flights. And we plan to expand SAF usage in the coming years. And nowadays, we use SAF departing from Istanbul airport to the European airports. And also recently, we started to use SAF from all flights departing from Izmir to Istanbul airport. Besides local usage of SAF, we also use from European airports to Istanbul airport SAF. But in coming years, we aim to support local producers, local SAF producer in Turkey. So we are ready to make long-term agreements, long-term SAF purchasing agreement in Turkey for actually create a SAF ecosystem in Turkey. And as we all know, climate change is a global problem, so it needs collaboration and take action together. In this way, we actually launch our voluntary carbon offset program to all stakeholders, CO2 mission. And it is a voluntary carbon offsetting program, and it uses very reliable IQ calculation methodology. And our passengers who wish to offset their flight emission can offset their emission using this platform. And we serve 3 different portfolios to our passengers. And one of them is greener world, the other one is social benefits, and the last one is greener social benefits and also renewable energy. And these are serve 9 different sustainable development goals. And also they have BCS and also gold standard certification. And not only Turkish Airlines passenger, but also all airlines passenger can offset their emission using this platform. And as Turkish Airlines, we offset our employees' duty flights via this program. And I would like to especially state that the fee comes from the offsetting. I directly transform to the project, and Turkish Airlines doesn't give any amount from this fee. And lastly, I would like to mention about cooperation in sustainability journey, all of us, because we know that sustainability isn't something we can do alone. So we actually establish and participate coalitions such as Turkey Sustainable Aviation Platform and Global SAF Declaration to exchange information and experiences. And in collaboration with Istanbul Technical University and also Boeing, we will aim to prepare Turkey SAF roadmap, because we know that without SAF, aviation long-term emission reduction target cannot achieve. So the most important thing to achieve long-term emission target as Turkish Airlines, we see SAF usage, but it is very limited and also it is very expensive nowadays. So we try to, as I mentioned in my speech, we try to create a Turkey SAF ecosystem.
We all have homeworks to do, as you all understand. And of course, the hardest is the SAF, sustainable aviation fuel, is the most difficult part, but we are all ready to contribute. Now, I would like to ask one question, the same question to all of you. As we close this insightful discussion, I would like to ask you to share one key message or an insight you want all this audience to take with them home and take an action in the future. I'll start with you, Burcu.
Of course, my pleasure always. When I was listening to my esteemed panelists, I'm getting more hopeful. I have my days, I have to be honest, that I get really pessimistic about the impact or even the progress that we have made. We know it's here to stay, and when we look at some of the figures, if the progress is staying on the same lines in terms of decarbonization as well as renewable energy, we're already at the 2.7 hallmark of climate warming, basically. But it makes me hopeful that even the younger generations are taking responsibility to make the change. One final thing, I
Let
think...
me comfort you.
I'm very young too. I know. It comes with the job.
I've been around longer, and it is getting better.
Yeah,
we have to measure and see the improvement.
I was actually referring to myself when I said young. Well, it doesn't come with the age, as you know, Dilek. I mean, you are very young too. It comes with the energy and the passion about making that change possible. I think we all practitioners carry the same passion, if not nothing else. I think since this morning we've been talking about regulations, the compulsory or the voluntary changes that we also wholeheartedly drive, some of the incentives, financing models, so on and so forth. I think regardless of the industry, value resides, I'm going back to the value and the impact, value resides with the beholder. And value for our industries is the user, which is harder, even the hardest to impact, which is basically where rubber meets the road. So in my case, when it comes to agriculture, because going back to your question, is it the villain or the hero? I'll let the crowd to judge, but I think it's still both.
I'm changing my mind.
We're still both. I mean, when you think about agriculture, it has to be both. But the beauty of it is we can make it different in the shorter term than any other industry if we have that concerted effort. But when we make that effort, the key question that I would ask, and I would ask anyone as the practitioners in the room to go back, whatever initiatives, strategies, or implementation roadmaps we have, we should think about who the burden should not fall onto. We always get the question, who will bear the burden? I think we need to flip that question upside down. We need to eliminate who the burden should not be carried by. And in my case, it's the farmer. I have to make sure the burden does not fall onto the shoulder of my farmers, but anyone else.
Thank you. Özlem?
In terms of being the villain or the hero, I think it's all industries, it's equal, or even all of us, you know. When we talk about being just resource conservative, I don't know how many of us go back home and be resource conservative as we should be. I mean, honestly, I'm not. So I'm trying to be, but I'm not. So I think what I would say is I would steal from Nike to say that maybe just do it and not just talk so much about it, because we do talk so much about it, but whereas in terms of action, you see the decreasing figures overall, and that's what's making me a lot of pessimistic, by the way. So I really don't comprehend why it's that hard internationally to just put on the regulation and just go along with it. I really don't. I really don't understand why at the EU level they're talking about all these regulations, and then when it comes to implementation, they just back off and just take the days, like they just say, oh, okay, we postponed this and we're going to do this now, because the lobbying is so intense not to do it. But the lobbying to do it falls behind. So I think we should all be like active fighters when it comes to why we should do it. I think why we should do it matters more than, I mean, fighting for how and why we should do it matters more than saying why we cannot do it, I think. And that's my philosophy for everything that I'm trying to do in my life, by the way. And so, yeah, I would say that we are all villains. But we should not be villains for the sake that what was the name of that movie? Don't Look Up. Was it just a huge asteroid just coming to Earth and everybody just talking about it, and that scientist just freaking off saying that it's coming, and we're at that point and we should see it, that it's coming, and it will be too late once it comes. So that's my message.
Thank you for a very heart-to-heart conversation. We're just among us, so we're sharing our secrets and insightful feelings.
And lastly, I
Deniz.
would like to say, let's work together on this issue, because I think by working together we can transform challenge into the opportunities, waste to wealth, and pave the way for a more resilient and prosperous future for the next generation.
Exactly. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for a very warm and heartwarming and inspired conversation. I hope you all enjoyed it and take your homework back home.
So thank you for this great panel. We made a long way, but we have one more panel to go, one last panel. So please, we have 15 minutes
Sanki daha iyi olacak.
for
Enjoy
the
the coffee break.